The story of the 1990s doesn't begin with a championship. It begins with a shift in culture, in personality, in the way basketball felt. The league entered the decade with uncertainty, aging stars fading out, new faces rising, and a quiet pressure building over what the NBA was supposed to become. The 1980s had given the game life, but the 1990s would give it identity. The decade opened with a familiar sight, Michael Jordan standing on the edge of greatness. But what people forget is how fragile that moment was. Jordan had been the league's most electrifying scorer, a phenomenon who could fill arenas and dominate highlight reels. But in the late 80s, he kept hitting a wall painted in blue and white. Detroit's bad boys, physical, punishing, determined to break him before he could ever break through. By 1991, everything changed. Jordan came back stronger, calmer, more complete. He read defenses like a book he had already written, and the Bulls surged past Detroit as if lifting a curse. When Jordan finally met Magic Johnson in the finals, it felt like the symbolic passing of an era. Showtime faded, a new dynasty began. The NBA's spotlight shifted from the coasts to Chicago, and the 1990s officially started. But the decade wasn't just the Bulls' story. It was the story of every team that chased them, every star that rose trying to claim something Jordan wouldn't give up easily. The New York Knicks built their entire identity on the idea of stopping him. Patrick Ewing battling in the paint, Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason delivering hits that echoed across Madison Square Garden. Every Bulls-Knicks playoff series felt like a street fight disguised as basketball. Games didn't just determine winners, they determined survivors. Meanwhile, in Indiana, a quiet rivalry grew louder. Reggie Miller became Jordan's antagonist in arenas filled with hostility. Miller wasn't physically imposing, but his confidence cut deeper than any elbow. He talked to Jordan, he talked to the Bulls bench, he talked to the crowd, and more often than not, he backed it up. Their duels gave the Eastern Conference a tension that felt like a thriller, where the villain always came close but never quite won. The Western Conference was shifting too. Los Angeles and Boston faded into memory, and new powers rose. The Portland Trail Blazers built a complete, dangerous roster led by Clyde Drexler. The Phoenix Suns created a run-and-gun spectacle with Charles Barkley at the center of it. And in Seattle, Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp became the league's most electrifying duo, blending defense, athleticism, and confidence in a way the league hadn't seen. But while the West kept evolving, the center of gravity remained the same: Chicago. Jordan won again in 1992, again in 1993, and as the league crowned its new megastar, something unexpected happened. He left. The most famous athlete in the world walked away from basketball, leaving behind a dynasty paused in mid-sentence. Jordan's retirement cracked the decade open. Suddenly, everyone believed they had a chance. Houston rose first. Hakeem Olajuwon delivered a masterclass in intelligence and grace. With Jordan gone, Hakeem became the league's final boss, outplaying Ewing in '94, then dismantling young Shaq in '95. Olajuwon reminded the world that the NBA was still a big man's game, and that footwork could be as powerful as brute force. Meanwhile, young stars began crafting their own stories. Shaq arrived as the most dominant physical presence the league had seen in decades. Penny Hardaway rose beside him as if the Magic had stumbled into a dynasty of their own. But youth doesn't always survive pressure. Their finals loss to Houston marked the end of their innocence. When Jordan returned in 1995, everything shifted again. The league felt whole. Ratings surged, crowds exploded, even opponents seemed sharper, more focused. But Jordan's comeback wasn't instant glory. The Bulls fell to Orlando in the playoffs, and people questioned whether the throne was gone for good. That doubt lasted less than a year. In 1996, Chicago unleashed a team that looked engineered instead of assembled. Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, 92 feet of pressure, discipline, and precision. They won 72 games, a record that felt untouchable. They dominated the regular season, dominated the postseason, dominated the era. The Supersonics fought hard, but no one could stop Chicago in 1996. What made the 1990s unique wasn't just Jordan's return, it was how every challenger adapted. Shawn Kemp elevated his game. Gary Payton became the only guard who truly believed he could guard Jordan. Karl Malone and Stockton formed the league's most consistent duo, operating with a precision so sharp it looked mathematical. And yet, every road ran back to Chicago. In 1997, Utah finally earned its chance. Malone won MVP. Stockton hit the shot that broke Houston's heart. Salt Lake City believed this was their moment. But the 1990s were unforgiving. Jordan delivered the flu game, 48 minutes of suffering, discipline, and willpower. The Bulls stood one step above everyone again. In 1998, Utah pushed harder. Pippen's back failed him. Rodman battled exhaustion. Jordan was older, carrying the weight of a collapsing dynasty. That finals were not a duel of youth. It was a duel of endurance, of legacy, of what a final chapter should look like. And then came the shot. Jordan crossing over Byron Russell. Jordan rising. Jordan holding the follow-through as if freezing time itself. One basket, one moment. The end of a dynasty that defined a decade. But the 1990s didn't belong only to Jordan's Bulls. It belonged to the teams they held off. The Knicks who fought through bruises, the Indianas who nearly stole the East, the Magic who burned bright and faded quickly, the Rockets who kept the league alive when Jordan stepped away, the Jazz who came closest to rewriting history. The 1990s also belonged to transformation. Television ratings exploded, sneakers became culture, the NBA went global. Kids around the world learned the names Jordan, Pippen, Barkley, Ewing, Malone, Stockton, Kemp, Payton, Hardaway, Shaq. Stars became icons, icons became myths. What made the 1990s the greatest era in NBA history wasn't dominance, it was the struggle against dominance. It was the tension between challengers and champions. It was the sense that greatness was happening in real time, visible to anyone who watched. It was the decade where basketball matured, where identities sharpened, where rivalries became symphonies, and where the NBA didn't just entertain audiences, it shaped generations. The 1990s weren't perfect. They were something better. They were unforgettable.